Every season has its setbacks, the highs, the lows, and the moments that make you question everything. For Syracuse men's lacrosse, its falter down in College Park has raised more than a few eyebrows, leaving many wondering, what's next? Well, it's another top 15 opponent in Harvard, in its first meeting with the Orange in nearly 20 years. Is this the start of the championship DVD, or is this merely a sign of things to come? We're breaking it down on the Cuse Countdown, next.
If you tuned in to watch Burgess Got Talent, you're in the wrong place, because this is Cuse Countdown, and I am not Simon Cowell. But we do have two very handsome British men across the desk from me, Luke Burgess and Nicholas Waley, and we're breaking down number 6 Syracuse's contest against number 15 Harvard this week. Gentlemen, it's an honor to be at the desk with you two, but I'm going to start with this. Did you guys watch the SNL 50th anniversary celebration over the weekend?
I watched some clips on social media. That was it, though. Not live.
It's a little bit more of the TikTok clips for me on this one.
And that's just fine, because unfortunately we have to start as Debbie Downers to begin this show, because Syracuse men's lacrosse, well, they faltered for their first time this season. Down in College Park, 11-7. They lost to Maryland in a second half where Maryland pretty much kept their foot on the gas, and Syracuse had no answers.
Well, that was the issue, right, Max, is that Syracuse just didn't have answers. Maryland's adjustments out of the locker room were really impressive, and it's a credit to what John Tillman has done again and again and again. Now 7 straight wins against the Orange for Maryland, and he's the reason why. He knows how to adjust to this offense. The defense came out firing in that second half, and Syracuse only had 1 goal in the third quarter. That was really the crucial period of 15 minutes for me.
I mean, the incredible stat for me is that Maryland head coach John Tillman has never lost to SU in 7 attempts. I mean, that speaks a lot. It just that stat alone. Syracuse only scored 2 goals in the second half. Owen Hills was the only one who scored for Syracuse as well. I mean, it's just overall so disappointing for an offense that was so good in the first 3 games of the season. The Syracuse team that just looked unrecognizable in this game.
And it's disappointing and almost fitting that those 7 goals in the second half for Maryland also ended up representing John Tillman's 7th win against the Cuse. But ultimately, he said it in the post-game presser, he doesn't score the goals, it's his players that score the goals. And one player that maybe didn't necessarily score as many goals for Syracuse as he has been in recent time, that was Joey Spallina. A second year in a row, he kind of shrank when Maryland was in town.
I think that might be a bit of an overstatement. I don't know if I entirely agree with the fact that he didn't show up for the occasion. I think he didn't have as much help with the rest of the field, but yeah, I mean, Spallina, 2 goals, 2 assists. I understand that there's very high expectations for this guy. I mean, he had the second best odds behind CJ Kirst going into the season to win the Tour-Eton Award this year. So, yes, obviously, 2 goals, 2 assists doesn't look as flashy as you may like, but this is a really good Maryland defense, and I don't know if you can be super disappointed when you look at the rest of the scoreline for the team.
Exactly. I think the fact that he's been held to such a standard and has done so ever since he stepped on foot of this campus. Of course, you look at the stats of the way that he's played, especially against these top 10 opponents. Yes, but at the same time, you're playing against some of the best defenses in the country at the same time. Look, so I can't fault Joey too much in this situation. Maryland, one of the best defenses in the country, and will be certainly a contender come Memorial Day weekend.
He almost does it to himself because he's so good against these bad teams that when a good team rolls into town, 5 points is a disappointing day.
And it's worth noting, no Ajax Papillo on this Maryland team, though. Will Schaller was the one that pretty much locked up Spallina down the stretch in that game. But again, just a season low 4 points. You can't really scoff at that. But Syracuse still had a pretty all right day offensively, outshot Maryland by 9, but really didn't necessarily have the I guess the percentage on net to actually get in any rhythm for this game.
I think the big thing for me in this game was just the disappointment, the drop-off, especially in that second half. Like we mentioned, they were outscored 7-2 in the second half. All of a sudden, all their weapons that were scoring goals left, right, and center over the first 3 games just disappeared. The likes of Michael Leo, who went scoreless in this game, pointless in this game as well. Finn Thompson, Owen Hills did grab 2 goals in the second half, but otherwise, we talk about how Joey Spallina, he's that facilitator for this team, but when the rest of his guys aren't stepping up to the plate, what much more can you do?
One guy who's not on there is Luke Roa, and that really stands out to me. I mean, think about the first goal of the season, that crazy one-handed, left-handed little flick as he was falling down. That's another guy who only had one goal in this game, right? So we have players emerging for SU, and they're not showing up in the biggest moments, and that's the issue. I don't think that the issue is Joey Spallina. I think that the rest of the offense has to elevate its game to meet where the offense needs to be in order to take down these top 10 teams. It's just the way it is. You have to have these players deliver in big moments. Michael Leo as well, like you said, held goalless. That can't happen. It's as simple as that.
And for a guy that was just so prolific over the first 3 games of the season, scored 7 goals in those 3 games, and that included the game against Vermont where he scored 0, and that was a game that was a little bit more managed by the Cuse. So look, the Syracuse team just needs to play better.
And when you have as many pieces as Syracuse does, you have to perform when the lights are brightest and when the stage is the biggest. But let's shift our focus to the other side of the ball, because I myself have gone back and forth multiple times this season asking what unit is better, the Syracuse offense or the Syracuse defense. Well, in this past game against the Terrapins, the Cuse defense really couldn't gain any traction against the Terps.
4 games into the season now for Syracuse. We knew that the attack was going to be very good, but it's been the defense that there were some question marks with going into the year. Let's take a look at one of my favorite plays where the defense really shone. I think it has potential to be one of the best in the country. You see a double team switch right here into the middle of the field. Jacksonville trying to cut down a seam. Syracuse does a really good job of diagnosing when to collapse the defense. We'll get one more look at it here in slow motion. Stop it right here. This guy on the right-hand side, he becomes isolated. He's all out there by himself. But watch what Nick Kakemo does. You can play it right here. As the play progresses, he cuts off that right side, so there's no passing outlet. 55 in green is forced to shoot, and then you love the effort from Jimmy McCool getting all the way back, showing off that hustle play, and doing a lot of good things for Syracuse that maybe we didn't see as much of, Nick, against Maryland.
And I don't necessarily think the defense has been bad. This has been a Syracuse team that actually has been really good defensively to start the season. But one play in particular against Maryland I wanted to take a look at, which was really the turning point in this game at the beginning of that second half. The first shot saved by McCool, couldn't hold on to it. All of a sudden, the game is tied. But let's take a look at it in slow motion. You see coming up at the top of your screen, here comes the shot. Stop it right there. You see the Maryland player picks it up, number 32. 1, 2, 3 Syracuse players surrounding him. That ground ball needs to get picked up. I know McCool probably should have held onto it, didn't let it stick in his stick, and in the end, Maryland with an opportunity pretty much really easy for them in the end to make it 5-5. Started at the beginning of the downfall in the game against the Terrapins, and they're just a little bit of teething troubles for this Syracuse defense. And Max, it's not, like I said, it's not necessarily been bad, but certainly room to improve.
Right, Nick, plenty of room to improve, especially you look at some of the second halves in these last couple of games going back to Towson, Maryland. You can even go back a couple games to Vermont. The defense kind of stalled out in that second half, was really dominant at the beginning, but then slowly but surely started to maybe take the foot off the gas a little as the game went on. But no one is more important on the defensive unit for any lacrosse team than their netminder, and for Syracuse, it's Jimmy McCool, who has only been anything but calm, cool, and collected in net. 12 saves against the Terps. That tied Logan McNaney, who also had 12.
Yeah, to me, Max, he's been the best part of Syracuse season so far.
Really?
I really love the way that Jimmy McCool plays in net. He's got a confident swagger about him. If you remember last year against Hobart, he came out onto the field. It was like single-digit temps or something. No shirt on. I love that. He tweets about Boston sports like crazy. I'm not a Boston sports fan, but I love his passion. He's fired up, I'm sure, for that Four Nations face-off game a little bit later tonight. And in general, he's just a confident guy in net. You saw him take the ball all the way out to his own 40-yard line the first game of the season. Like, this guy understands how to play with some swagger, and he's really good at it. So give me more Jimmy McCool, and give me more confident Jimmy McCool, because that's when he's at his best. He was playing in the elements in that last game. I think you got to give him a break. He faced a ton of shots, Nick.
And this is a guy who's waited 2 years for his opportunity, got to learn under one of the best in Will Mark, and now he's taking that opportunity. I think he's certainly grabbed it with both hands, and I think, yes, he's had a few teething troubles, probably, well, no, I can't even say it was his worst game against Maryland. He didn't even play that badly. Of course, we saw a little earlier that one little mistake, but I can't really fault him for that either. This is a guy He's got 62% save percentage on the year. Done really well so far. I think it's only up and up from here for him.
Still don't know if there's any a funnier anecdote than when Will Mark watched Jimmy McCool last season and then used an expletive when he saw him play, realizing just how good he's going to be for this Syracuse squad, and he has certainly lived up to his expectations this year. But we got to change shades of color for this next block here on Cuse Countdown. We're going from the orange to the crimson. We'll talk about them next.
They told me a bottle couldn't dream. That I would never become a superhero. But I learned how to fly. Just to come back in a new disguise. And be the hero that I've always wanted to be.
We're back on the countdown, but I have some more bad news. We have to change the title of this segment because it's not Cuse Countdown anymore. It's the Crimson Countdown.
Oh, come on.
Oh,
Actually, I hate it.
Yeah,
You
no,
hate it?
terrible.
I retract that. No, I hate it.
All right, well, you know what?
Terrible
Number
color
15,
anyway.
Harvard, may not necessarily be too happy with its start to its season either, just like maybe you're not so happy with me right now. Harvard came into this season a highly touted squad, but are only 1-1 on this year after a recent loss to Colgate this last week. Now, granted, that's a good Colgate team that had been receiving votes to get in the poll, but a tough loss, especially in non-con play, for a team that was just 8-4 last year.
Well, and especially at home as well, Max. That part of it really hurts. And they just couldn't keep up with Colgate's offense down the stretch. That's not really what you expected because last year the MO of this Colgate team was to be really physical and beat its opponents up so they just couldn't score. So maybe they're trying something new this year. I don't know. They want to be more competitive in the Patriot League. But I think that they just did a really good job, Colgate that is, of keeping their foot on the gas pedal. And Harvard got a little bit run down. The man-up unit just was not clicking on all cylinders. Like the passes were slow. They weren't quite getting to their spots in time. And you could see that Colgate still had that physical kind of identity rolling over from last year, and it did affect the Crimson in the second half.
There was one point late in the first half where they went on a 7-2 run. All of a sudden, that lead that was the lead that Harvard just really couldn't keep up with. And like, yes, this is a Colgate team that isn't ranked, but they're receiving votes and they upset
Historically, a really good program.
Historically good program, and I think when you're getting to the upper echelon and just that right on the border of the top 25, these are teams that can really cause an upset on any given day. And yes, this is a Harvard team that really should not be losing this game, especially this early in the season, but now have an opportunity they really don't have anything to lose now against Syracuse this week, so could be a bit of a dangerous game for the Orange.
I love the word you use, causing an upsale on any given day, and that's what a guy like Sam King has done for this Crimson crew. I mean, you can crown this guy, Sam King. I mean, it's in the name. But I mean, this is a guy that was a Tewaaraton nominee just a year ago, first team All-Ivy, and is well on his way once again.
And he's on the watch list once again this year. I mean, this is a guy that all of a sudden has just jumped into the spotlight in terms of men's lacrosse. I think he truly not just is individually brilliant, but he just makes the rest of his team better. And you talk about what a most valuable player is. He could be up there in terms of who is the MVP in men's lacrosse this season, just because of what he brings to the table, the way he is able to facilitate his teammates. 10 assists on the year, 3 goals already. I mean, he's been an all-Ivy player every single season he has played for the Crimson. So I think this is a guy that is only going to get better. He's still got 1 year left after this. I mean, big expectations for him.
Syracuse fans should be familiar with the way that this guy plays because he's a big assist guy. Kind of reminds you maybe of Joey Spallina. He plays a little bit more out on the wing than Spallina, who's more of like an ex-attackman. But I really like the way that this guy passes. It is impressive stuff. He knows where his teammates are going to be. He kind of has that box lacrosse intuitive nature to him. And already got 10 assists on the season, but this guy can score too. He had 2 goals against the Colgate defense that was really physical, like we talked about, and kind of shut down this offense in the second half. So, yeah, I mean, certainly a guy to watch for, and I think someone Syracuse is going to have to key in on because this Harvard offense as a whole doesn't have a ton of weapons.
And that's right. And King is a guy like Spallina who has sort of spread himself out as the years have gone on. You mentioned really playing primarily on those wings, but really shooting from wherever and whenever. And only 3 goals for King this year. And Harvard's only had 8 other goal scorers besides that. And a lot of those are fed by King. Who are some other players that Syracuse fans should look out for?
Jack Spidell is the one that really stands out to me. The ability to work well on the man-up unit. He's the main guy that they're going to. They're trying to find him drop into the space in these zones, and you see the 8 goals on the season so far. He doesn't have any assists as of yet because he is kind of that. I mean, Nick, I want to say he's that Michael Leo, but Michael Leo held scoreless against Maryland. So Jack Spidell, yeah, he's more of a downhill dodger. Like I said, he can kind of find the soft spots in those zones, and he's got a great shot. So he's the one that stands out to me the most. But Bodkis and Malone as well, you see on your screen right there, both excellent attackmen as well. We do a lot better job of distributing the ball.
Yeah, very top-heavy team, but like we said, for Sam King, 3 guys that can really be lethal if they get given the ball in the right position. So I think this is an offense that Syracuse defense really needs to look out for. It's not going to be an easy game by any stretch of the imagination. These guys can be prolific and could really be a threat to the Orange.
Shout out Owen Gaffney as well. That guy is really, really good.
Absolutely.
He's got 4 goals in the season so far.
All right, well, we just named a lot of different faces for you that play in all different places. So how would I add 11 more names to that total? But I promise I won't name this entire lineup of players. But these are all guys that should be known because this is what has propelled Harvard into such a high spot in the rankings to begin the year. This is the 8th ranked recruiting class in the entire nation. The only better Ivy League school that has a better recruiting class is Princeton at this point. And there are a couple names I want to point out, and I'll just start with Jack Hennahan, their current leader in faceoffs. Now the Crimson, a very middling faceoff unit, but look out for a guy like Hennahan, who's only a freshman, taking a majority of the draws. And then I'm going to direct your attention to the end right here with their netminder, Graham Stevens. This is a guy they call Pants. You know why? Well, because he only wears shorts, except in this case, he's actually wearing pants, which is actually very shocking. People call him Mr. and Mrs. Pants, actually. This is a guy that is the #1 recruit in the entire nation when it comes to goaltending. And this guy, I mean, what can't you say? The most saves by a Harvard goalie since 2007 in an opener, had 13 in that one, had 13 against Colgate, already 26 saves on the year, has faced over 100 shots to begin this season, and a guy that Syracuse probably going to pepper a lot come Saturday. Stevens going to need to be on his A game. But Syracuse fell off its A game this past week, so that leaves some questions. But the good news is I have some analysts who are going to answer them. Is it time to panic? Is it not time to panic? We're playing some Panic Meter next on Cuse Countdown. Freak out. Cuse Countdown's back. Max Gifford, Luke Burgess, and Nicholas Waley. And we're talking about the Cuse's contest this Saturday against the Crimson of Harvard. But guys, after Syracuse faltered down in College Park this last week, it's only right, I said don't freak out, that maybe we start to freak out a little bit. We're playing some Panic Meter here on Cuse Countdown, the Panic Meter to be exactly. We have green, yellow, and red. There's plenty of levels you guys could go for this. So how this will work, I'll throw out a different unit, and then you guys will give me, I guess, where you're sitting right now on that panic meter. And we'll start with the attack. I know you two have been particularly high on this attack, especially this offense and all the different weapons that Syracuse has. But where are you sitting after maybe stalling out in that second half against Maryland?
Well, right now for the attack, yes, there are some concerns, but I'm just moderately concerned at the moment.
Okay.
I don't want to panic too heavily because there are a lot of weapons, right? And they do a lot of really good things. You talked about all the guys who can make plays on this offense. Obviously, Joey Spallina is the #1 guy, but you've got guys like Luke Rowe. We talked about him a little bit earlier on. He's exciting, right? I love the way that he creates with his offhand. He's a two-handed player. You've got Owen Hiltz, who we haven't even brought up yet. This offense is going to figure it out long term. Just give it time. I think there's a lot of good pieces here. They just got to figure out how to gel together long term.
I think we know that this is an attack that is just flowing with talent. I mean, we know this. This is a team that has so many weapons, but I'm starting to panic a little bit more. I'm getting towards the end of that scale because I know it's early in the season, but once again, it's against these top 10 opponents where all of a sudden it seems like the offense disappears. So for me, it's a concern of down the line what's going to happen. Syracuse is going to be playing a ranked opponent basically every week at this point, and when May comes around, don't be
surprised. There's a big difference between the top 5 and 15 Harvard.
I do not disagree with you, but at the same time, you got to tell me that this weekend against Harvard, it's not going to be at least a little bit of a threat. Syracuse has to be on the pace when it comes to the attack, so I'm a little bit worried. My heart is racing.
You're high concern.
I am worried because it's happened year after year after year. It happened. It's happening. It's consistent.
All right. Let's let the mediator on the panic meter. I guess what? I don't have an opinion. I think you both are right in your own nature. So very nice job. But maybe we'll get to something you might be able to compromise on better. Luke, I know especially you're high on this goaltending unit with Jimmy McCool, but not just this guy. Their backup, Michael Ippoliti, a guy that, similar to McCool, might just be an understudy right now for when he does come into the fold in a couple of years. Nick, where do you stand on the netminder unit for Syracuse?
Completely opposite to what I was saying about the offense. There's nothing wrong with the goaltending at the moment for Syracuse, in my opinion. Jimmy McCool, like we've mentioned on the show already, he's waited his time. He's learned under Will Mark, and I think he stepped up to the plate in a big way. I think this is a guy who is taking his opportunity and has done a really good job in net at the moment. Has 62% save percentage on the year, just about above 40 saves already on the year. I mean, when you go going up against a Maryland team that was really going forward was doing really, really well in the second half. I mean, I think he did everything he could. I mean, he's like Luke, like you mentioned, he was and has been one of the best parts of the Syracuse team this season.
You talk about Ippoliti, yes, I am very excited about him. He's already played more than Jimmy McCool did in the regular season last year, but also this defense is good. So if the goaltending ever does get questionable at any point of the season, I'm confident the defense can back up the goalies and make them look good. It's just like our producers over in the other room. They make us look good when we mess up. So that's exactly what Jimmy McCool does. That's exactly what this defense does in front of him as well. I'm a little bit concerned about the fact that things started to trail off in that second half, but overall, don't consider me too concerned.
All right, so Luke's been moderate for both his takes so far. I mean, I think the hardest job you mentioned was the producers trying to make someone like me look good.
Oh,
but we've covered the attack. We've covered Jimmy McCool right behind you right there. And we're going to stay behind you because there is Gary Gate, if you can see him on our screen, that our lovely producers made. There's a lot of questions surrounding him after a loss to a team like Maryland. I know me in particular am asking, can Gary Gate get that signature road win that he's been lacking? Has shown he can beat a ranked opponent, at a neutral site going back to the Hopkins game last year, but still missing that one piece for that true road game ranked opponent. Where do you stand on Gary Gate right now?
Yeah, no, I am a little bit concerned about Gary Gate, and I know that he can get the big win. Look at Hopkins last season, right? That was his signature win where he finally broke through, but I don't know about the consistency, right? Still hasn't been able to beat Maryland. John Tillman has his number again. So yes, I'm a little bit concerned long-term about Gary Gate. I just don't know. I don't know what I don't know what this team's identity is offensively in these second half games where they're tight. They haven't shown the ability to pull away long term. It is a little concerning, Nick.
I think I'm a little bit on the same level, maybe even a little bit more. I think once again, too many times that Gary Gate's gone into these situations, gone into these big buildings, has the opportunity, has the tools in front of him, and just hasn't lived up to the billing. I think, like you mentioned, that offense, that blueprint just hasn't been brilliant and hasn't been consistent enough, in my opinion. I think he's got the most talented team that he has had in his tenure at LSU. This team should be fighting for a national championship come Memorial Day weekend. Look, I know we still got a long way to go, but that's the expectation.
Gary Gate's certainly good at a couple things, giving you good hairstyles, giving you good talent.
Oh yeah, the slicked back was my favorite.
It was so good.
That was
the best
man.
era.
I like the ties. I can't lie.
The ties also play. You're wearing a pretty good tie as well. Both of you, I should say.
Appreciate that.
But maybe Gary Gate hasn't just gotten Syracuse enough big wins yet. But maybe he'll have a chance to get some of those big wins. Maybe this Saturday, maybe even in some Saturdays to come. We're telling you the Cuse's upcoming schedule and giving our predictions. Next. Just a couple more minutes to go on Cuse Countdown with Max Gifford, Luke Burgess, and Nicholas Waley. Finishing up talking about number 6 Syracuse against number 15 Harvard this Saturday. And this is the start of sort of some of the tune-up games, I'll call them, before Syracuse really gets into its gauntlet of ACC play. Now, Harvard, a very good team. Utah, another team that was ranked a couple weeks ago. Johns Hopkins is the big one out of those four. And then you have Manhattan, who Syracuse pretty much should steamroll.
I think Syracuse can beat Hopkins. I know that's the game that everyone's eyes are going to, so I'm just going to go right down there as well. They beat them last year. This time you're playing them in the Dome. They've shown holes. Their offense is not that good. I was honestly a little bit surprised that they were ranked as high as 3. And so I think Syracuse can get it done. It's just about staying consistent. Like we talked about the consistent 60 minutes. I don't mean to sound like a coach, but I mean that's the reality. You have to play a full game.
I think the worry for me though is that Utah game going all the way to Salt Lake City. I mean
the elevation.
That is a trap game.
They've talked about that.
It really is, because you just really don't know what to expect. Like you mentioned, Max, this is a Utah team that was ranked. It is a dangerous team, and going all the way to even colder temperatures. Syracuse, we've seen
what connecting flight.
Exactly. You've seen that Syracuse, when they play in a little bit of weather, hasn't gone well for them, like we saw against Maryland.
And also a Utah squad that held Syracuse pretty close to begin that game last year. Ultimately, the Cuse came out with the win. But it's time to get to our predictions here on Cuse Countdown. But first, we got to take a look back to last week. And, well, it was a pretty meddling week for everyone at the desk. I mean, I don't really know what to say. Shrikar 1-2, Skylar 1-2, AJ 1-2. No one breaking away from the pack.
I mean, everyone was very similar in their predictions. Everyone said that women's lacrosse was going to lose. Obviously, an upset in many respects, but yeah, not too good of a showing from our colleagues.
Yeah, Shrikar Rajendra, -30. Going to need a mountainous comeback to come back from that. But now it's time for you guys to etch your names on that scoreboard for the first time this season. Who do you have in Syracuse's contest against Crimson? Just the first contest between these two since 2006.
Yeah, I got the Orange. I think they're going to steamroll the Crimson inside the Dome. 18-9, my final score prediction. Syracuse figures it out early, and they get it going. I just don't think Harvard stands a chance.
I will stick with that prediction a little bit as well, but I'm going to give Harvard a few more goals. 18-13 for me. I think Harvard, they've got something to prove as well after losing to Colgate. Could be a little bit dangerous for Syracuse early on, but at the end of the game, I think Syracuse pull it out.
This is a really cool moment for me because I get to now channel my inner Kirk Herbstreit on College game day and say, no, I'm not making a pick. I don't have to make a pick. So I don't know who's going to win this game. Is it going to be Syracuse? Is it going to be Harvard? Who knows? These guys know better than me. That's why they get paid the big bucks. But that's about all the time we have left on this episode of Cuse Countdown. I want to give a big thanks to our executive producer, Dan Papillo, and in addition to our entire production crew. For Nicholas Waley, Luke Burgess, I'm Max Gifford, saying enjoy the game, and thanks for watching this episode of Cuse Countdown.